Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the Weekend Wellness Hour show. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we have a new guest this week who is going to be talking to us about relationships. I was part of a mastermind called M1, where I got to meet Tina Jesso, who is joining us today. And she's a success coach, and she has done a lot in the space of finances and helping people out build their lives in a different way. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tina.
You're quite welcome. It's an honor.
I really appreciate you coming on because you started in the financial world for 30 some years and you've kind of transitioned into the coaching world, it sounds like, and looking at relationships. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I had been working in financial services for over 30 years, and it's like a little light bulb that went off and said, maybe I'm made for other things as well. I had accomplished everything that I had set out to in the financial services world, which meant I built an agency from scratch.
Wow.
And this is really key, is that I zeroed in on people development. And I truly believe, and luckily early in the game in the late 80s, I was very fortunate to be introduced to the likes of Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Jack Canfield. Zig Ziglar was a big one for me, right? I just followed, I basically found a way to not reinvent the wheel. So I used everything that I was learning in order to achieve a certain level of success in sales. It was a sales position. And then what I did is, and I was really excited about what I was doing, which was helping families plan financially for their kids' education. And that's a really big deal for me, education. Mm-hmm. And then I was asked to move into management and start hiring people. And then again, not reinventing the wheel, I had found a way that worked, combining personal growth along with certain methods that I had developed for working, always with the idea that it's always a win-win situation. Primarily, the client has to win. And as long as the client is winning, inevitably the representative and the organization and the company is winning at the same time. So with that perspective, I built many of the future sales leaders of the company. And it didn't seem like it was a huge amount of effort, simply because I really love what I was doing, right? I loved helping people, and I loved communicating with them according to what they needed to hear and in the way that they needed to learn in order to move forward, because we're all individuals. So how I coached one rep and mentored one rep wasn't necessarily a carbon copy for every single representative.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So after having done that for 30 years, I said, okay, I've done everything that I can do here. I think that there's other things that I want to move into. So therefore I sold my agency. I could have retired. I said, no, I really want to do something that is really meaningful for me. And then at the time I feel like I've been talking a bit. Is it okay if I?
Yeah, keep going. This is fascinating. Keep going.
So at the time, I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and we were having a glass of wine like girlfriends do. And I was going on about my latest experience in the online dating world. And then I said, and I'm a professional, right? So I'm not used to certain types of behaviors that you see in the online dating world. And it was just, I found it baffling. Said, how can people, that seemingly are professional and good people, and yet these types of behaviors seem to be rampant in the online dating world? And I said, if I was in charge of a dating site, this is what I would do. And so then that was the genesis for the idea to start a dating website, which I did for a couple of years. I reached a certain level of success, but then I decided, and part of figuring out what you want at your path in life is trying certain things. And if they don't work, or they're not going in the direction that you want, is to decide early it's time for a pivot, right? Take what you've learned, be grateful for that, and then use that to move forward. And what I learned from that is that I love helping people with their relationships. I love coaching. So from there, what had really helped me in my success in the financial services, I'm sure you've heard of Jack Canfield.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jack is amazing, and I've always looked up to him. And basically, what I did is I followed his book, The Success Principles. My business was in a downturn, and I basically took it from going down to the tune of minus 20, going down by 20% in my business. And I turned it around within a year, I was plus 20.
Wow.
Right? Simply by using the success principles. So I said, okay, so business principle, it's not just about business principles, it's about life principles. And it could be applied to the area of relationships as well. So that's when I decided to become a Jack Canfield trainer, did the course with him over a year and a half. And that was really amazing. The next step with that is we were doing the success principles. Jack is all about experiential type of learning, right? Mm-hmm. So he would take us in, even at the time, because COVID had hit, we were virtual as opposed to in class. We were supposed to meet in San Diego, and I was so looking forward to that, being from the Great White North. I was so, here I'm in the Montreal area, Canada. I was looking forward to San Diego. That didn't work out. That's okay. But along the way, what we saw virtually it was really still so rich. And that was helping people get really clued into on what was important for them in life, and then how to live that in your life. What is your purpose after all? And how do you get there? How do you even figure that out, right? Especially for those of us who maybe have been working in a certain area our whole life, or done things a certain way. And we just, sometimes you wake up one morning, and maybe you've seen that too, Amy, with your clients, right? You just wake up, you wake up in one morning and you say, well, who am I? Like, I don't even, do I really even like my job? My kids are leaving home maybe, or relation. And then who is the person sleeping next to you, right? Has it just been, kind of routine for a long time? Is it time for a rediscovery, or maybe even, who knows, even therapy, or even a change, right? So taking us to that path through Jack, what I discovered was the passion test. So the passion test was put together by Janet and Chris Atwood. And their process is basically that, walking people through how do you discover what's most important for you in life, and how to bring more of what you're passionate about in your life, and how to prioritize, and what are some key principles to keep in mind as you're doing that. So since I did the passion test and the training, and one of the key tenets of the passion test is coming up with your top 5 passions. And look, I didn't have to look far to show you my card with the top 5 passions, which can change on a regular basis, as it has for me in the last couple of years. So then I decided, I was so, I just knew it spoke to my soul. So I became also a passion test facilitator. So I've been using that with my clients as well.
Is that test something where you go through a questionnaire and then it comes up with a score and then you have to interpret it? Is it something along that line?
Yeah, you're really not far off that. Like, you can go on the Passion Test website and you can do like a mini quiz, if you will. But really, if you want to get the full benefit of it and make sure it's accurate for you, because this is really important, right? And, I'm going to answer your question directly in a second, but I think it's highlighted by a really good quote. And the quote that it resonated with me from a young age when I read it in the Reader's Digest, is that one of the greatest tragedies in life is all the people in the graveyards that are there with their music still left in them.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
A lot of people.
A lot of people. Exactly. So, and the thing about your passions is that you can try to help or try to figure things out young in life or later on in life. At any time, this process is relevant. So to answer your question directly, it's actually a 2-day workshop. It can be a 2-day workshop if we do it in a group, or we can do it in a day. I've done it, in a 3-hour workshop, but there's follow-up after that, right? So we take you through a process really of digging deep. What's most important to you in life? And we make sure to cover all the important areas, all the in from M1, right? We're used to
Mhm.
talking about the gardens in our life. So
Mhm.
be it spirituality, career, health and fitness,
Mhm.
relationships, money, all of those areas we touch upon. Where people get their biggest breakthroughs, and I've seen people break down and cry when we get to this
Yeah.
step, Amy, which is prioritizing,
Mhm.
right? The top 5 passions. And sometimes I'll get parents who say, "Oh my God, my children are not in my top 5 passions. What am I, a terrible parent because I don't?"
Mhm.
But what it means is maybe things are handled at home. Your kids are good, right? You got a good relationship with them. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean they're not a priority, but what it means is that they're not necessarily the things that you have to start prioritizing right now
Yeah.
or start working on,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So it's really surprising to many people what makes the top 5 list. And I even, as an example, I was doing it with one group of people, and one of the ladies just started crying in relief. She said, "Oh my God, coaching didn't make it in my top 5." She said, "I just feel like with my friends and just courses I've taken that I was supposed to be a coach because I like helping people. But she said, what this has helped me realize, it's not what is closest to my heart. It's not really a priority." So therefore, she cried in relief,
Oh.
right? So it's good to
Mhm.
know what is a priority and maybe what's not a priority, and stop wasting your time and maybe your financial resources at the same time, or reduce it, right?
Yeah. And I can see how you could use this passion test once you discover what is really making you tick. And when you prioritize it, you have a different energy about you, which is going to influence your relationships, whether it's a business, career relationship relate, or, personal, kids, anything like that. I could see how it can start to shift you.
That is such a great observation. And I'm giving away a secret now.
Mhm.
So one of the secrets of the passion test is that once you decide on your passions, is to always choose whenever you have a choice to make, where you're at that fork in the road.
Mhm.
And when the thing is to choose in favor of your passions.
Okay.
So to give you an example,
Mhm.
as I told you, I was doing some online dating and, different relationships here and there. But I put it in my top 5 passions to have a meaningful, respectful, loving relationship. So part of that means, um, doing what you need, taking action, right? Doing what you need to put everything on your side. So I revamped my profile online and I
Mhm.
made it so laser focused as to who I am right now.
Mhm.
And I just visualized, right? Part of that is visualization.
Mhm.
And within a week, right, there were 3 top things that were on my passion list. One
Mhm.
had to do with my relationship with my son, one had to do with finding a love, and the other one had to do with actually a financial project, right?
Mhm.
That I could grow over time, build and grow over time. And all 3 of them were active in my life within 2 months of having redone this passion test.
Wow.
Right. And I had been like a long time, look, in the, dating on and off. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden, like the perfect man arrived. It was incredible. My
Mhm.
relationship with, but what I did is I started choosing in favor of my passions, right?
Mhm.
Like with my son, whenever there was like a decision to make, or an activity that he was asking me about or to talk to me, oftentimes I would say, "Oh, can you wait a couple of minutes? I just got to get this done." Or, "Can we talk about that later on tonight?" But since it was in my top 5 passions, if he walked into my home office, he needed something, I closed my computer screen, I said, "Let's sit down. What's up?" Right? That's a choice, an action
Mhm.
step that I took at that time. And then also, I believe magic starts happening, right? Don't
Mhm.
you believe in a little bit of magic? And it has to do with energy. So what happens is that when you take action steps, it's like the universe starts conspiring in a way to present you with opportunities that maybe the blinders were on a little bit. And if you can call having magic show up in your life, removing the blinders that you may have had and to see everything that's in front of you, then that starts to happen. And I've seen it for myself and I've seen it for my clients. It's a straightforward, simple process, but it's amazing the results it can have.
It's incredible. And it sounds like you gained some clarity, everything just kind of followed in step with that. Once your brain and your body knows where you want to go, you can put all your resources towards it. And I can see how your relationship with your son could improve because you had some clarity on that and how important it was to you. You're able to find a love to join you in your journey. There's so many different ways that we show up differently when we take the time to get clarity on what's important to us.
Yeah, and actually, just a perfect rejoinder to that is is a quote from Janet Atwood, who's the author of the Passion Test, and that is, "What you want will show up in your life, but only to the extent that you're clear."
Makes sense,
right? Clarity.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And so, with this Passion Test, you can use it to help people, but you also do another assessment, the Xyte Insight test. Can you go through that one a little bit? Because I know you use that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I use both of these either in a group setting or with my individual private clients. And the Xyte it's called a cognifile, which means a cognitive profile. And basically it's a 4Genius assessment in order to help people to figure out really fast, after doing a 10 to 15 minute survey, a questionnaire, and it's 28 questions. And basically it helps people to tap into their innate preferences. Right? Which is not an easy thing because there's a plethora of different types of personality assessments out there that we, I'm sure you've experienced and your audience has experienced, and me working in sales, we want to predict human behavior, right?
Yep.
So there's so many of them out there and they're all good, they all work, and I use them and had decent, very good success with them, actually. However, the difference with this particular assessment is the fact that it really taps into how you were born, who you are, right? It's kind of like, am I born right? Are you right-handed or left-handed? So just to give you a quick example, and this is really powerful. I was kind of born, no, let's forget that. Let's look at today. Like for years, I worked in sales. I led teams. I've spoken with a group of people, 300 or 400 people. It's nerve-wracking. I think that's normal, but I can do it, right? And now we're on this podcast. I've done, many different things with people. So I thought, okay, I was an introvert when I was a kid. So much so I would hide behind the couch when people would come over. One of my teachers told my parents, I'll never forget it, Tina's not going to amount to very much in life unless she can speak up and get over her shyness. He meant well. I get that. It wasn't well delivered, but he meant well.
Yeah.
The point is that really I was born an introvert, but I've learned skills. Right? I've learned skills in order to be more functional for the things that I'm really passionate about achieving in life. However, why that is important and significant is that, isn't it important, and better than a lot of people, Amy, the importance of knowing how to rejuvenate your energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if not, stress, anxiety, physical affliction, and thank God people like you are there to help people, right? To get over these stress or anxiety related conditions, that how they're manifested physically, right? So the point being that now that I really have tuned in to the fact that introverts are different from extroverts in how we recharge our batteries, right? So my boyfriend, for example, who's an extrovert, let's go to and see such and such. Let's have these people over. He gets really energized, right? Which is cool. I like it too, but I can't for a long time. I need to step aside. I need to have my own time. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. It could be taking a walk by myself, having a bath and vegging out with Netflix for a little while. That's how I recharge my batteries. It's really important to know how you recharge your batteries and not think there's something wrong with you because you need to have that me time or that alone time. So these are the type of things that we really tap into with the cognophiles, and it's measured on 4 different dichotomies. How are you motivated in life? What motivates you? How does your mind work? And how do you kind of rejuvenate your energy? And then from there, within the profile assessment, you see similar type of famous characters that are very similar to you, how to leverage your strengths. What are your strengths and how to leverage them, and how you communicate best, how you are as an employee or as a manager, and communication styles, so that you know the best matches for you, because it can help you in your relationship, right?
Okay.
When you can match yourself with another profile that actually is pretty similar to you. Or if you're already married, and I have a lot of married clients who are in relationships with people who are like at a different end of the spectrum in terms of their profile. It doesn't mean it can't work, but there's potential pitfalls, right? So let's see how both of you are built. And here's a bridge. Here's how you understand each other. So can I give you a quick example?
Absolutely. Please go through that.
So I have a client who, she's 73 years old. She had reached out to me and she just left her husband. I'm 46 years of marriage. I'm sick and tired of all of this, blah, 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 blah. And I don't have that many years left and I want to be in peace. And he doesn't get me, right? And I'm tired of it. A beautiful life they had built together, great kids and grandkids and all the rest. So we did their cognophiles. I did both of them together. And then when she saw clearly that the things that she thought were microaggressions, or that he just wasn't getting her, or he can never change, right? He can never change. He's doing this on purpose. It just took the wind out of those sails completely. And then she said, that's the way he's built. He was born with these characteristics. So she was able to not take it personal anymore. Right. And then him, the same with her. And he saw how to make her feel more valued, appreciated, and respected, and vice versa. And she moved back in with him. We created all of these weekly challenges and fun activities kind of to find their way back to each other. And at the end of it, she said, I feel like I'm on my second honeymoon. Right? 46 years of marriage.
Wow. That's neat. Really neat. And sometimes we need that guidance. We don't recognize maybe how we've changed, how our perspective has changed. And the rediscovery is beautiful. I can imagine her husband was probably pretty excited as well to see some changes.
They both were ecstatic. He didn't want the separation or the potential divorce at all. He was super upset. And it's not a time in your life when, if you really love someone, that you want to step aside, right? If there's any way of building peace, and a higher connection, right, before the next stage, then that's certainly a point to do it. But it's also very useful, or I should say, and it's also very useful in the workplace. Would you like me to give an example on that one?
Absolutely, because we all need help in improving our relationships in a business, in our job, whatever it takes.
Yeah, so I'm working on a couple of projects right now, both within companies as well as in the justice system for people that are transitioning out from incarceration. So the really cool thing, first of all, with the businesses, like one of my clients runs a small business, for example. We did cognifiles of his employees, because there was a little bit of wondering, like, she's so smart, like his reflections, like, she's really smart and I tell her what to do, but yet just, it doesn't get translated into what we need at the workplace. So when we did her cognifile, as well as everybody in the company, we realized you got her working in production, right? In the factory. And she is a 100% people person. This is how she thrives. She can make people feel like engaged. She needs to be, customer service, HR, something like that. So what happened is that it's a small company, so you can't necessarily, sometimes small companies, you had to be chief, cook and bottle washer all at the same time, right? So you can't necessarily make those drastic changes. However, what he started doing was giving her more responsibility in customer service, right? And giving other people within production more responsibility to help transition those that were more into production. They had that type of mindset. They like working with systems. They like solving problems. They like working with logic, whereas she was all about people and making people happy and solving people problems as opposed to process problems. Right. And in another situation, and actually in another office situation, it's really cool when the manager shares his profile with everybody, as well as vice versa. And then I was having private conversations with everybody, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad to read, Jack, her supervisor, because I always thought he was a little disorganized and a little crazy. But what I see is that that's kind of his personality. But what I appreciate is there's such harmony in the workplace. He always has the right thing to say. He makes sure people are thriving as much as they can. But I was always a little bit bothered by what I thought was disorganization, but I see that it's not. So she has a whole new level of appreciation. What happens when there's more value of what everybody around us is doing in a relationship at home or in the office is that, okay, valuing means the other person, ourselves, right? And then others, as well as it leads to more appreciation, right? And people feel the energy of being respected or not, even though you may not be saying the words, "I thought you were just a little too unorganized to be my manager." That's translated into appreciation, and people feel that. So there's more potential for harmonious relationships. And I'm sure, I'm not even, well, maybe you're already aware of this stat that 19% of the North American workforce feel they're not engaged, according to the latest Gallup polls, right?
Yep. It's awful, because if you think about it, we're kind of like this glassy-eyed look. We're not really involved in our relationships. It's often one-sided, or we're not really invested in it. So you talking about someone having value for someone, that's obviously a sign of a good relationship, especially if it goes both ways, where people value each other, have appreciation for each other. So what are some other kind of key features of a good, solid relationship, whether it's personal and romantic, business-wise, familial relationship? What are some of those hallmark signs?
You know what? Relationships, just like individuals, can be very different, right? So how a relationship might work for somebody in your family and his or, or her husband may not be how it works well for Amy, right? And I'm sure you can identify with that, right? And I'm sure a lot of your viewers as well. And I think of my own family, and their relationships work, but it's not something that, it's not a relationship necessarily that I would function well in, just because we're all different individuals.
Yeah.
But as long as you feel heard and valued, and that you don't feel like you're, well, what's the opposite of valued? I guess is undervalued, but also that your needs are secondary to the needs of your partner, or that you have to put your needs secondary in order for there to be harmony in the relationship. Like the example I gave a second ago of my 73-year-old client. She had felt like her needs were always a notch below his. She was always
Okay.
trying to make him feel okay, and for him to flourish in his career and things like that. So it's just a whole life, in addition to the fact of the differences in their character. Right. So that's a sign, in order to get the good signs, sometimes you have to look at the bad signs, right? And look at the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes we get a little bit oblivious on our relationships and we may not attend to them like we should. And, things crop up that it kind of gnaws at us and may not be overt at first, but it eventually eats away at us. And then the relationship falls apart. Whereas sometimes if we can look at, okay, what what do we need in a relationship, and it may be different for each person, but also what are some signs that, okay, I need to take note here and see if I can correct it, whether it's a communication issue or you don't have the same values. I think those are important aspects.
Actually, the last word you said, right? Values.
Hmm.
Number one, especially when you are getting a chance for a fresh start, for whatever reason, it didn't work out in the last relationship, but there's things to be learned also for people that are in existing relationships. Do you share the core values? Have you even taken the time? This is the thing, and this is why I love so much the passion test, because it forces people to stop in their tracks and just figure things out. Like, who am I? What do I want? Get that clarity, as you said.
Yeah.
And even though you have a relationship which is maybe not ideal, it's just to take stock of what it is and ways that you can work on improving it potentially. And one of the ways is, maybe a very big sign, is that if your partner, you realize maybe, you don't necessarily feel valued, you feel the other person's needs. And sometimes as women too, right, Amy, that we tend to put our family's needs ahead of us. And sometimes maybe in, my generation or your generation, we had that tendency more so than today to put our husband's needs ahead of our own, like their career needs, for example. I think less and less. So those are definitely signs. And if the other person's value, like if honesty is really important and fidelity in a relationship. I know of many couples, for example, where the wife looks the other way and the husband, there's a lot of infidelity going on.
Yeah.
But if that's, I don't like to judge, right? So if it's okay, somehow it works for her, right? It wouldn't work for me, but if it's working for her on some level and she's made her peace with it, and this is what they've decided, then, so be it. But if you see those types of things happening where you are turning that blind eye, right? You got a lot of hard questions to ask yourself. And sometimes it just acknowledge that you're scared, right?
Yeah.
There can be a lot of fear behind that. Where does that come from? Is it based on what you've witnessed as a child and maybe potentially some dysfunctionality when you were younger? And I know that played a part in my marriage breakdown, or for me staying in a dysfunctional relationship in a marriage a lot longer than I should have, because sometimes we tend to go on autopilot in the sense that we're in it and we witness dysfunctionality. So dysfunctionality becomes normal for us. So we endure for a lot longer than we have to. So if you feel like you're enduring, if you feel like your relationship is a carbon copy of your parents' relationship that that you don't really fundamentally want, I can say there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
There's so many either groups that are available. They're, talking to a doctor, a therapist, a coach, and even just going online and joining. There's so many free materials where you can join master classes of even support groups, right? Just being able to talk about it first is the first step. Having compassion with yourself for having stayed and maybe endured a certain amount of dysfunctionality. But now that kind of the lights are going on in the room, what's going to be your next step? And it doesn't have to be something that happens drastically and overnight. It can be baby steps, and just be compassionate for yourself as you move along that path.
Yeah, and all of that applies even to business relationships too, because I remember one of my first jobs, I had an abusive boss, and it's not something that's well known. And he was actually physical as well as verbally abusive. It was not a good situation, but I stayed because of fear. I didn't think I would be able to get a different job in the city. I thought he was going to ruin my career if I said anything. And there was actually one person who stood up to him, and I supported her. And it was scary because I got punished for it. But at the same time, once I broke free from that, the relief, and I realized you can't treat people that way. You can't treat people with anger and um, a sense of control. Everyone's an individual, and learning how to communicate. And if you're frustrated, express yourself instead of, taking it out on a person in a negative way. But I know fear is a very strong driver to keep people in relationships, all types, that they shouldn't continue if, it's harming their health. And when they see that there's another possibility for a different type of relationship, I think, it's helpful for people to reach out to others and get that help.
Such a great point. And if I can add something to that, and I think I said, yeah, so reaching out in baby steps and starting to talk about it, maybe not right away, but as time goes on, this is a super important step. And it took me a while to even get to that step myself after my marriage broke down. And that is taking 100% responsibility, taking ownership for the fact that you stayed in that job for whatever the reason, right? There was nobody nobody chained me to the chair to stay in the family home with my ex. And there were all kinds of reasons, right? We could link it back to our family upbringing, other reasons, wanting to keep the family together, being a bit of a people pleaser, right? Maybe with a few self-esteem issues at the same time. Like it's all of that. So I take ownership of that. That was me. That wasn't on him, right?
Yep.
And just like if you're in a dysfunctional work situation, that's on you if you stay. Right? We recognize the fear that's around losing a job. But one thing that's really interesting and really hopeful right now is that I just heard a statistic today that actually from Simon Sinek, if you know him, he's like a guru when it comes to workplace, workings. And basically it was because of the great resignation, right? Is just people are leaving their jobs in droves right now, it seems. And not just the baby boomers who are on the edge of retirement, like people who are really dissatisfied in their jobs. It's because of COVID, right? There's been so much turmoil and so much fear around COVID. Like where's the economy going? What's happening to the stock market? What's going to happen to my job, my kids, those types of things. People are developing a higher baseline for handling fear right now. So as a result, the possibility, whereas before COVID, or maybe, a few years ago, they wouldn't think even of leaving their jobs.
Right.
Now they're looking at it because they faced something, they faced a fear and they survived it. Actually, this is a great definition of confidence from Jack Canfield. How you develop confidence is from surviving a risk, right? They have the confidence to leave. We're working into the confidence part of life now, into the confidence equation as opposed to the fear, right? Surviving a risk.
Absolutely. And it's true. And when you have that confidence afterwards, it bolsters you up to take more risks and to realize you are of value. You can take responsibility for your actions in the past and in the present, but then also you can look at the future in a different set of eyes. So
Okay, really important point, and that was awesome what you just said. But what's I think also really awesome is that what I realized in my own experience when I took 100% responsibility for my part in my marriage breakdown, it was such a relief. And the relief was that I had the control after all. I did have the power. Because when you paint yourself as being a victim, victimized by an employer, by a spouse, male or female, by the way, I've seen both, is that it's like you're powerless, right? It's kind of like you've heard the story of the baby elephant that gets tied up as a baby, right? With a rope around their leg, they can't move. They become so conditioned that even when they're an adult and they could easily just walk away, they don't because they're conditioned. Right. So we're not elephants, right? We're not elephants on a train, on a restraint, right? We have the control. And that's the beautiful part of taking 100% responsibility. If we had problems with the law and with addiction or with this or with that, with our parents, our partners, our bosses, we ultimately have the power to walk away from that and also to work on ourselves. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that just sets us up for better relationships in the future because we learn to set boundaries and we have clarity. So we can, once you have an interaction with someone and they understand your boundaries, it's going to be a more peaceful relationship. So
I think everything that we're talking about today really applies to all levels of relationships and even with your employers, right? Establishing those boundaries. But I would say that the more the employer is aware of who their employees are, I'm not saying, just use our type of assessment. It's pretty good, but there's a lot of great assessments out there. And there's different ways of tuning into the needs of your employees and your coworkers, and then working and creating an environment for success where people feel free and not fearful. They feel free to be who they are, and also to express themselves. We need a safe environment, right, where people are not punished for expressing themselves, but they have to feel safe within that environment. Again, you're building the confidence, right? And as much as possible, realize our role as leaders is leading by success, modeling the very behavior that and part of that was like that leader in that group I just told you about. He shared his profile, which, it wasn't saying his bank account number or anything, but still it was insane. We all have our strong points and we have our challenges. So he just put that out there, and that was tremendous sign of leadership. There's no fear there. Like we're all in this together. And my role as a leader is to guide you the best way I can. And how can I do that is finding out more about you and what are your strengths and anything I can support you in where you have challenges.
Absolutely. And this is absolutely wonderful. And just as we wrap up here, if people want to work with you, how can they reach you?
It's pretty easy. It's tina@tinajesso.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn also by my name, Tina Jesso, Jesso.
Okay, thank you. Is there any last minute tips that you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, 3 tips.
Sure.
Okay. And I call it my U tips. The first one is, it's a different way of saying what you just said about clarity, but YOU. Why for yearn? What are you yearning for in life? Let's look for clarity on what you really want. Let's define it. Doesn't matter how old you are. The O is taking ownership of who you are and taking that 100% responsibility for your own progress and keeping your heart open, both to maybe in the work situation as well as your love life, right? And that is, and also knowing that in order to really just have a great life and contribute to others is also looking at the you part of it, which is understanding yourself, right? And if you need a bit of help for that, then seek out, a therapist, a coach, somebody like yourself, Amy. And every great leader that's out there have had a coach. Every great athlete, as you know, have had coaches along the way. I had a business coach for over 10 years, and also a personal coach at a certain point in time as well. And that helped get my head on straight with my relationships, right? So we all need help from time to time. And so YOU, what are you yearning for? Taking ownership of yourself, and you is understanding yourself.
That's wonderful. Thank you. What a great way to end this, because it's easy. Someone can take that with them. So I really appreciate your time with us today. Thank you so much. And people, please reach out to Tina. She's a great resource. She can help you along your way on your journey to a new life or a better life, however that suits you. So have a great rest of your weekend. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.